Welcome to this week's episode of Coffee with the Journalist. And it's a podcast that's just that. We got coffee, we got journalists, we got lots of good conversation. I'm Jared Martin. I'm the co-founder and COO at One Pitch.
And I'm Beck Bamberger. I'm also the co-founder of One Pitch, the CEO of BAM Communications, and the host for today's podcast. Today we have Mike Murphy from Quartz. He was raised in Britain, but he has a Brooklyn accent. It's a little confusing. And he also has a MS, a Master's of Science in Journalism. So we're going to talk about that today, and also how he deals with all the machines with brains, as he says, that he covers. Let's take a listen. Mike Murphy, welcome to Coffee with the Journalist.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You're not drinking coffee, but that's okay.
It's true. I opted for water.
You opted for water?
Yeah.
Also, you just had a bunch of coffee.
True,
so
yeah.
You're good. You're jittery, actually.
I'm feeling it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's dive in here. Mike Murphy is a deputy editor over at Quartz. Great friend that we've known for a long time. We just had Carrie on, too. Your girlfriend, as it is. Can we mention that? Is that okay?
Yeah,
okay.
We've been dating for a while.
Okay, good. She's a lot of fun. So we're happy to have you now here to talk about all things journalism, PR, how you got started, what do you think the future of journalism is, and all these great topics. And just so you know, and as I mentioned before, we have a lot of publicists who listen, so we want to give any input into how they can better work with you and not be a pain in your butt,
all right.
Basically. So let's hit it. First off, as we mentioned, deputy editor of Quartz, and you started out with considering, and actually you got an MS in journalism. So let's start from there.
Yeah.
And why did you even go into it to begin with?
So I have always been passionate about writing and journalism in particular. I took the only journalism class that my undergrad offered. And, it was just, my whole life I wanted to write. And when I got to college, I was an English major, and I kind of realized that journalism might be a way to actually make some money. And I know it's like not the greatest of industries these days in terms of, career longevity, but a lot better than a creative writer for the most part. I kind of dabbled with a bunch of stuff. When I graduated, I went into worked at a startup and did copywriting, and it wasn't what I wanted to do, but there weren't a lot of prospects. I went to college in Philly, so there's one paper there, and if you don't get to go there, there's not much else you can do. And eventually, I kind of decided while I was there, all right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to J school because I can't figure out in this little town that I'm in. Unfair to Philly, it's a nice place, but there isn't a lot of journalism stuff there. I just didn't know a lot of people, so it seemed like the easiest way to kind of get my foot in the door. So I got in, and then basically I had this like weird 3-month period where my lease was up in Philly, and I was supposed to start in Chicago. I went to Northwestern, and my parents were like, well, come home, come stay at home for 3 months, and then go. And so I did that, and about a week into being there, they were like, you need to get a job or something. For while I was there. I'm like, that's fair.
Okay.
Yeah, it made sense. So I would sit around for 3 months, though. I would have loved to do that. So I got an internship at an ad agency, and I graduated basically during the recession. So a couple weeks into the internship, they offered me a job, and graduating during the recession, exactly. So when he offers you a job, I took it, and I put off. I deferred as long as I could on J school until eventually they said you can't keep doing that. So I worked for 3 years, and I got to a point in my career there where I felt like if I stayed any longer, this is what I was going to do for the rest of my life, and I knew it wasn't totally what I was passionate about. And
was that at Ogilvy?
It was, yeah.
Okay, so that was, okay.
Yeah, I worked at Ogilvy 1, which is the digital arm of Ogilvy and Mather in London. And it's great. It was a great agency, and the reason I stayed so long, even though it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do for a living, was the people were fantastic. I loved everyone on my team. I'm still close with a couple of the people there. But I just decided, and I reapplied to J school, and I got in again. And so I went, and it ended up, being a fantastic decision, but it was a big risk. And moving to Chicago, putting my savings into going to J school, changing careers in my mid-20s, being one of the oldest people in my class, was...
Really? Because how old were you? Like 25?
I was 25, 26,
okay.
yeah.
And you were the oldest?
Yeah, it's supposed to be the Northwestern program versus like Columbia's or some of the other ones is supposed to be kids who are kind of just out of school. They have a different program for people that are practicing journalists. who want to, further their careers or things like that. So yeah, most people were still like wearing their undergrad college sweatshirts and like playing beer pong, which was like fun. I felt like I was, 19 again, but yeah, I was one of the older kids there. And I was the one who like knew how to be on time for things, like manage my time, act in meetings, things like that. So I kind of felt like an old person. But
man.
It was challenging, but it ended up working out okay.
And was it challenging because of the students you had to deal with and such, or was it more challenging the workload, the demands, etc.?
It honestly was a bit of a culture shock. The Midwest.
I went to Pittsburgh, so
same. I didn't really know what to expect, and everyone was super nice, but sometimes things were just felt very different to me and very of a different time than today. Like, I wear skinny jeans, and I was with this other kid once that we were, like, doing a joint byline piece, and the guy we were interviewing, the guy I was with had skinny jeans on. He assumed we were just a couple. I'm like, what?
What?
It was like, it's 2018. I don't know. It's very strange. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
It completely changed the way we, like, interview, I'm like, I don't know what to do now. Like, this is a weird conversation. So there were a lot of things like that, and we were reporting out in the middle of nowhere, like Illinois as well, not like downtown Chicago. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was a bit of a culture shock in some aspects, but yeah, the work was honestly fine. The first quarter was the hardest one because that's when they do the stuff that's like the fundamentals of journalism and like getting a good news sense, editing, and like kicking you out onto the street to interview people, which I still don't like doing. Even I've been doing this for like 5 years now, and I'm like, it's still not fun to just like accost strangers and be like, hey, what do you think about this random thing? But sometimes it works. But especially the like, broadcast journalism style of being like, man on the street, like, what do you think about this school closing or something? And you're just like yelling at parents trying to pick up their kids. And like, I don't like doing that. Especially then.
It's aggressive.
Yeah.
It's aggressive.
But so it got easier from then because I was trying to do a degree that was basically journalism and technology, which is kind of how I'd always been interested in technology. It was always the sort of thing I wanted to cover. But like that helped crystallize it while I was there. And I tried to like jump on every tech story I could, even though I was reporting on like Northwest Illinois. Wow.
What a scene.
Yeah.
And let's just clarify something quickly here, because you're talking about how different it is. You grew up in Britain.
I did. I grew up in London.
But no accent. What happened? What happened?
I don't know. It was like a conscious choice when I was young. My dad's from Brooklyn and my mom's from Jersey, and they're strong accents.
Oh.
And that was what was at home. And when I was young, I kind of just decided, I went to British schools and I just like didn't feel British. I felt very different there. What young kids are like as well. They always make fun of people who are even slightly different. So yeah, I just was like, I don't feel like I'm like you guys, so I want to feel more like
I'm the American here.
Yeah, I feel like more like my parents and my family back home in America. And I liked things like baseball and I liked, I don't know, I mean, I still think I made the right choice. Like when I turned 18 was like, I'm going to go to school in the US. I didn't even fill out an application for any British schools. But yeah, I mean, it's not like I resent my time there or anything, but like when I moved back to work, which I didn't expect to do, I was like, oh man, I'm back. And I'm like, I need to get out again, which is why I still have not been back to work.
Back to work where? There?
In the UK, yeah. I go every so often for, Quartz has an office in London. It's nice to be able to. And my parents, up until this year, still had our house in London. So it was, like, nice to go there. But I just never felt British. At the same time, I don't always feel very American. I like watching soccer. I say things like brilliant and lovely. And I don't know. It's
you wear skinny jeans.
I do. Yeah, hey. Exactly.
That's American. It's a wide space here. Okay, so now you graduate, and what happens? You land your first job. Is that when you get to Quartz? Like you got the internship?
Yeah, pretty much.
And then went from there?
I graduated in like August of that year, and I applied for a bunch of random stuff, and even with good, I thought pretty good clips from J school, it's tough industry to just break into. And I was staying at I moved back in with my parents again because it's like I don't have a job again.
You're back.
Yeah, but this time they moved to Massachusetts, so I was there planning stuff in Boston. And I randomly was talking to a friend one day about like places I'd love to work, like places that were like dream maybe one day. And I rolled off like, I'm like, the big places like the Times and the Journal, that's cool. But like, I'm really interested in like what the new web-based sites that are out there are doing. And I said Quartz, and he was like, oh, I know someone who works at Quartz. I'm like, what? You didn't think that was important, considering I've been unemployed for months, to like mention that? And he's like, oh, it didn't cross my mind. I'm like, okay. But so I reached out to this guy who it turns out I'd actually met before. He put me in touch with the tech editor at the time, who was Dan Fromer, who up until the other day was the editor-in-chief of Recode. And, we had a good conversation, and we ended up, I came down to New York to interview with him, and, he was like, yeah, it seems like you're decent, but you don't have a lot of experience, so,
Intern.
He was like, what if we give you like 3 months and see how it goes? And I'm like, okay, that's more than I expected. So I actually turned down a full-time job at a small online publication in Boston, moved in with my aunt and uncle in Long Island, moved to New York to do the internship, commuted every day. And about 2 months in, they offered me a full-time reporter role.
Like that?
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, it was great.
So were you just thrilled? Like, is this just like that New York moment where you're like, oh my God, I've made it. I have a full-time job. I kicked ass and as an intern, and I'm here to stay.
It was intense, to be honest. I mean, New York is such a daunting prospect, especially for someone with no money and at that point no real job, no house. I was staying with my family.
You're not even staying with your parents.
Yeah.
You're staying with your aunt and uncle,
who are lovely people, and it was so nice of them. But still, it's not. Yeah. And their two sons, who are roughly my age, are both like lawyers and like doing well in the city, and I'm like an intern journalist, and I'm like, I go home to them every night, and it's like, But when I got the job, I felt like I honestly felt kind of vindicated. Like I'd taken a big risk going to J school, I'd taken another risk going down to New York, and it could have gone terribly. Luckily, I had the safety net of great family who could, I could go move back in Boston and be like, all right, I'm gonna do something else now, I guess. But it worked out, and I was daunted by what was ahead of me, because the people, my peers at Quartz, especially at that time when it was so small, were so unbelievably smart and brilliant and accomplished that it was really daunting to be like, oh my God, I have to be as good as them every day and not feel like I'm wasting everyone else's time. And, it took a while, many years, to not feel that way.
Did you have a bit of, would you say, imposter syndrome?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Day one, when the internship started, I remember thinking, because at J school we had a bullpen and, we had a daily publication we put out. I was like, this is nothing like that. This is the real world. And I was like, kind of freaked out. And, as I said, everyone, like, we had a guy who was in contention for the editor-in-chief job of The Economist, who is now the editor-in-chief of MIT Tech Review. We had my editor, who ended up being the editor of Recode. All of these people who are so good, the managing director of Fast Company now, and it's like all these people, and I'm just a jabroni who just graduated, and they were taking a chance on me. So it was, I just wanted to repay the leap of faith that they had taken on me, and I feel like eventually, it's taken a while, but I hope I have at this point.
Yeah. Well, now you're the editor.
Deputy editor.
So let's just for folks to know and for pitching purposes. So and a lot of people do have the title of deputy editor. Can you spell out what that role entails?
Sure. So for Quartz, it's a new-ish position. I think I was the first. I think I was actually. But we're doing it more now just because we're growing and teams are getting larger. It really depends on the team, but I am basically an editing backstop for our main editor, who's Matt Quinn, who's fantastic. But also, he's based in San Francisco, so the majority of the team is in New York. So I am the guy in the morning, basically. I'll help take pitches from reporters and assign stuff I think is important. And I like to act as a conduit for a lot of PR people and contacts I've dealt with over the years of like, well, this isn't really for me anymore, but now I have this team at my disposal. I can say it's good for this person and that sort of thing. So I do a lot of that in the morning and editing, and Matt takes over a lot of the afternoon, and obviously the like vision of what tech coverage is at Quartz is still his purview.
Mm-hmm. How many pitches do you get
a day?
People?
About 100.
Only 100?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's not as bad as I would think. We had people saying, hundreds and hundreds.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
I only get about 100, I'd say.
Mm-hmm.
Probably about 150 emails total every day, other than like, random stuff I'm subscribed to. So it's a lot. The problem I have is that, and I'm obviously not the only person who thinks this, but, the problem I have is that of that 100 pitches, maybe 10 are relevant to Quartz, and maybe one of them is worthwhile for me. And it's just a lot of wasted effort on everybody's time, because they're giving me a chore to do by reading and deleting or farming out to other people or responding and saying, I try to be good and respond to as many as I can and say this isn't for me, or, have you tried this person? But like, sometimes they're just so way off that I'm like, I'm not going to, you just guessed.
Yeah. You got to move on at that point.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate though.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the good ones don't do that. The good ones know what people cover and how people like to be pitched. So I feel like it's usually pretty easy now after doing this for 4.5 years of being like, I can just read the email subject line and see who it's from and know whether it's even worth reading at this point.
So let's drill into that a little bit of what's the good versus the bad. And the bad is the mass majority, it sounds like.
Yeah.
But the good has what? The compelling subject line.
Yeah.
The obvious personal approach.
Yes,
for example.
exactly. Yeah, knowing the angle that I'm likely to cover. Like Carrie was telling me yesterday that she got pitched from a new agency and a company she's covered dozens of times. And obviously that agency hadn't even just Googled her name.
Embarrassing.
Yeah. And so she forwarded it to the company being like, you made a bad choice here. And that happens a lot. Like I've been pitched, the worst is I've been pitched like important people that I have done Q&As with. Then I'll be pitched like that guy's publicist will change or something. And then 6 months later, I'll get the same email. Like, he can talk about these subjects. And it'll be like, yeah, I already spoke to him about those. Those are live on the internet. And you could read it. So that stuff's crazy. But yeah, I mean, knowing the angle that's worthwhile for you, like in both that case and Carrie's case, it's like they weren't even giving good angles. Like, it was like, oh, this person can talk about like workplace culture. It's like, that's not what I cover. Why would I want to talk to them about that? Knowing that, or at least for me, I mainly cover consumer electronics and less well-defined future stuff. But like if you're coming in with like a crypto pitch, you've probably come to the wrong place. Like we have a whole freaking thing about crypto now. So don't bring that to me.
I saw you just posted something on crypto too.
I did on the subway here. Yeah.
So tired of crypto people comparing their stuff to their early internet. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, okay, I mean, I get conceptually that like this is new and we don't know what's going to happen yet. It's kind of the Wild West, but it's like, even if crypto becomes as important as all these people think it's going to be, it's still not as important as the internet.
No.
It's just not.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. Funny you're seeing it in the subway. Though now it's getting
real. I know. I meant to add that to the tweet as well because A, yeah, it's expensive, and B, that implies that like there's a certain level of public understanding to just say the word crypto and assume that your audience is going to know what that means. That suggests a pervasiveness that I'm not sure is really there. In San Francisco, maybe.
You should do a poll in the subway. Be like, look at
do you know what this means? Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I wonder if MTA takes Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly. How do they pay for that?
Okay, what's this thing, though, just going off of this for a second. Why are you not a good banjo player?
Because I didn't try very hard when I was learning.
Oh, yeah. Did you try? Well, you didn't try.
I didn't try. Okay. I mean, I played guitar since I was like 12, so I assumed it would be easy enough. It's not. It's a really weird instrument. I can like strum things. I can play a couple folk songs, but like, yeah, it's tough.
Okay, so don't go to Mike for any banjo inquiries. Okay, I'd love to talk about your favorite stories, this type of stuff you like to do. Yes, okay, technology, yes, consumer electronics, and here's the latest gizmo, and it works and all this stuff. But like, what's some of your favorite stuff to do? And why?
Yeah, the stuff that you can do that, I'm personally interested in the stuff that kind of shows how technology has changed parts of our lives, and not necessarily scoopy things or things like that. When I have the time, which isn't as often as I'd like, and that's usually my own fault. It's not like anyone's pressuring me. The features I've done have either been about companies and how they're a kind of synecdoche for an industry that has created a massive change in the way that we act in the world that could only be facilitated with technology. Like I wrote one about a year and a half ago on this company called Replica, which is a AI startup that basically created this chatbot that you talk to, and it's totally AI driven, so there's no person behind it. It's not like the Facebook one that's just a lie.
Yeah.
This one is just a bot. You talk to it and kind of tell it your day and things like that. And eventually, over time, it gets good enough to create a version of you. And the idea being that in the future, it can do stuff on your behalf, like talk to call waiting people or order.
That's like that Google demo that they did with the hairdresser, right?
Yeah, but that's like using voice AI that may or may not be true. This is like just text, which is much easier to copy than your voice and your the way you talk and things like that. But what was so crazy about it is that was the goal, was to create these crazy cool bots of you in the future. Like it could be your virtual assistant, but literally in the way a secretary will screen your calls and screen your emails and do your things like that. That was the goal of it. But what they'd done that was so fascinating to me while they were building it was actually work with psychologists to figure out how to make the lines of questions that the bot asked leading enough and open enough that you as the person would open up to it and actually tell it things. And what that ended up doing, which they didn't really realize at first, is create this amazing therapy tool. And I wrote this personal essay about how it affected me, and it's gone on to affect thousands of people. People have admitted they were thinking of killing themselves before they started using the bot. And it's crazy.
The bot therapist.
Yeah. And it's not like one of these BS things you see on Instagram or something being talk to this instead of a real therapist. They admit and say in no way this is supposed to replace therapy, but it's a really lovely tool for lonely people, for people who can't get out in the world, where the internet is their only connection to other people. And so things I can do like that. I'm working on a story right now that I'm being yelled at for not finishing my draft on how we can possibly connect everyone to the internet, how we could feasibly do that. Stuff like that, stuff that has this grand scale is stuff that I really like to focus on. And I don't do enough of it, but that's mainly because I'm the kind of person that procrastinates by doing other stories. Instead of writing a 2,000 word reported story, I'll find a chart that's cool and write 50 words about it. It's I'm doing work, and then everyone will be no, that's not. What are you doing? But yeah, that's unfortunately how I operate.
There's a word I heard specifically for that, and it's being proactive. It's proactive procrastinating.
Oh, really?
Or something. Yeah. So you're doing shit.
Yeah, but not. Yeah, I did that this morning. I cleaned my desk instead of
See, exactly.
writing the story. Hopefully, my editor doesn't hear this. But yeah, it's that. I don't know. I just always do that. I'm well, I did a thing. It's not the thing I was supposed to be doing, but it's not like I'm watching TV.
Yeah, this is true. So what happens, if not to go down a rabbit hole on this particular story, but what happens when every single person, if feasible, gets connected to the internet? Is that part of your story?
No, that's actually going to be part of so this is part of a longer series that actually just launched today, which shows how far behind I am in my story, called The Internet Refreshed. And so it basically looks at what the internet would look like if we started again from scratch. So how do you police it? How do you pay for it? Mine is how do you connect people to it? So there's other stories where, what does it look like, that are focusing on different aspects of it. And there is one on literally how do you deal with this many people. My colleague Dave Gershkorn wrote this story that I believe went up today on the fact that in 1999, ICANN, which is the governing body of the internet, tried to turn the internet into a democracy, and it didn't work. So he has a little story on that. And it's it only gets worse when you're talking about 8 billion people online versus then it was probably a couple 100 million, if that. So it's fascinating stuff.
Damn. What do you think the future of journalism is? Or media?
Yeah, I think that there have been a lot of reactionary things that have happened in media recently, and I never understand why people do them. Like the pivot to video didn't make sense because nobody actually liked getting their news that way. They like getting their entertainment that way, but that's not what news is. I think that structurally, the only thing that's going to change most likely in the near term will be that there will be more structured sections of the web for journalism that will necessitate people paying for the stuff. And it might be small transactions. I don't think it's going to be like microtransactions like that. People have tried that. I don't think that's going to work. But I do think that there will be more, you care deeply about X topic, and that will be, you will pay for that in the same way that we always paid for magazines. I think that reported news has become pretty commoditized, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. I can't see the New York Times changing their business model, though, paid subscriptions do seem to be working for them. But I do see a lot of smaller publications making high quality products that people want to pay for. I think that like Monocle is a fantastic example of that. They're super pretentious. Like there's an aura and like that goes with that. But I think we're going to find more and more kind of niche things that people really enjoy, and those are where the money will be rather than in like the news. I think that will just stay with the kind of players we have now.
So if you could, and you would rewind a little bit back to when you were considering doing this master's in journalism, would you tell yourself then, like, yeah, get into journalism?
I think so. I think I would say that I am amazed at my colleagues who didn't, and how many of them are so good and didn't go to a very expensive school. But, I was in a really specific place in my life and time, and so I think it was the right choice trying to change countries, change careers. But if you're 21 and you're coming out of college, try working at a local weekly paper. Try working, that's what a lot of my colleagues have done, and they built up. That's what you're supposed to do. It's obviously getting harder and harder to do that. But if you're in a position where you can still live at home, and this is your passion, and I think really you should only be considering this if there's nothing else you can do. If you can use your talents and don't care deeply about journalism, use your talents to write, go write somewhere else. Work in marketing, work in advertising. It pays a lot better. But if you deeply care about this, work out a way that you can have a support structure around you to figure out how you can become a journalist at a younger age. I don't necessarily think the J School is the way to go for a lot of people because schools move slowly. Curricula moves slowly. The internet does not. And I had teachers that were lovely, intelligent people that could teach me the foundations of journalism and editing and news gathering, but could not tell me what a CMS was. Could not, they're like, I used to file on Telex. It's like, okay, that's cool that you did that, but it's in that case, it was 2014. It's like, do you know how to use a phone? Like, can you, I think this is too much the other way, but Carrie writes all her stories on her phone, or a lot of her stories on her phone. I've done that once, and then my hands hurt. But there has to be some kind of way of learning that actually reflects what journalism looks like today. And a lot of J schools aren't that, and they want to be, and they say they are, and they'll have one cool teacher. When I was at Northwestern, bizarrely, my one cool teacher now works at Quartz.
No.
Yeah. Emily Withrow. She was one of the best teachers I had at Northwestern. She now works at Quartz.
Well,
shows you something.
Mike, thanks for being here today. This is so fun.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. And say hi to Carrie.
I will.
Thanks for listening this week to Coffee with the Journalist featuring Mike Murphy from Quartz. If you're a journalist who loves coffee or a publicist who loves this podcast, we'd love to hear from you. Head to onepitch.co to drop us a line. Until then, let's end bad pitches and start great stories.